I am Cassie Rubico, alum and graduate assistant of the LaSalle University's Solstice Master of Fine Arts in Creative Writing program. Welcome to the fourth in a series of 7 evening readings taking place in Auburndale, Mass. As part of our January 2025 10-day residency, start of our spring semester. Tonight, you're in for a treat. We have readers that make up our Solstice faculty, faculty at large, and special guests. Each reader will be introduced by a member of the Solstice community. So sit back and enjoy the reading.
New Year's greetings to all of you in the Solstice community and beyond. I am so happy to introduce our next reader. Malaka Gharib is a journalist and award-winning cartoonist based in Nashville, Tennessee. By day, she works as a digital editor at NPR for Life Kit, a lifestyle podcast. At other times, she writes and makes zines and comics, with her work being published in the LA Times, Catapult, The Believer, and The New Yorker. And she's the author of 2 graphic memoirs, I Was Their American Dream, 2019, about growing up in California as a first-generation Filipino Egyptian American, and It Won't Always Be Like This, 2022, about the summers she spent as a young person in the Middle East. Malaka describes the process of making comics as, quote, little puzzles. There are 4 parts: the drawing, the dialogue, the narration, and the pace. And they all have to work together in concert to convey a much more complex meaning. I agree. This approach comes through in her work, which is honest, confessional, and informative. I love how she infuses even the most serious/intense moments with humor and a light touch. I'm excited to see what she will share with us this evening. Please join me in welcoming Malaka Gharib.
Josh, thank you for that lovely introduction. So wonderful to be here. Thank you so much. I'm going to be reading from my graphic memoir, I Was Their American Dream, and I'm going to go ahead and share my screen and read a little part for you. I'm going to read you my favorite chapter to read because it's just so fun and I think it's emblematic of everything. All right, here's my 3 minutes. I'll make sure to be on time. In my high school, the class president was Korean and the prom queen Filipino. At a school as diverse as Cerritos High, the most important question you could ask was, what are you? There was Vrinda, who was Indian American, Henna, who was Pakistani American, Albert, who was Taiwanese American, Emil, who was Pakistani American. Later, I'd come to learn the flaws of this question, but that's another chapter, yo. In the meantime, it was one of the quickest ways to understand each other's cultures. What are you? I'm Pakistani and Muslim. Muslim and South Asian, you must be Pakistani. No, I'm Indian. Oh, Pakistani from which part? My dad is from Tanzania. Gnarly. Isn't it against your dad's religion to marry someone like your mom? Muslim men can marry non-Muslim women. But isn't Palestine not its own rightful country? I know, right? Wow. Are you white? No, I'm Armenian. Oh my God, I'm half Filipino too. When people ask me this question, I found it hard to answer. What are you? Well, I'm Egyptian Filipino. I grew up with my Filipino family here in Cerritos. I eat rice every day and I went to Catholic school. But my dad is Muslim and lives in Egypt, so I spend my summers with him. I can understand Tagalog and Arabic. Izayek, kumusta ka? So I guess both. Well, I kind of feel more Filipino because that's who I spent more time with. That's cool, I guess. I'm just regular old Filipino. Huh. Like all kids in America, we were very heavily influenced by TV, movies, and pop culture. Total Request Live, hanging out at Tower Records and Borders for hours, burn CD mixes of NERD and Justin Timberlake, Buffy, Dawson, and all my friends on the WB, The Simpsons. I was especially into the TV show Felicity. I wanted what she had, a circle of smart gal pals who were into songwriting, getting good grades, and witchcraft. A love triangle between guys like Ben and Noel. Sophistication in the form of anthropology sweaters and Dean and DeLuca coffee. What I really wanted, though, was to meet real-life white people, and Cerritos had hardly any. In freshman year, I had a mega crush on a boy named Jorge. He wasn't white, but he was close enough. He was Mexican, Portuguese, American. He had fair skin and he had 8-inch high frosted tips. I wanted so bad for him to like me back, but of course he paid no attention to me. Being one of the whitest boys in school, he really had his pick of the litter. I had no freaking clue where this obsession came from. I just knew as a 16-year-old that white was better than whatever the hell I was. Why white people are so cool, according to high school me. They're real Americans. They do normal stuff like eat sandwiches for lunch. They're on TV and in the movies. They have perfect American accents. Howdy, y'all. I have a lot of confidence. They are richer than everyone else, and they don't smell like fried fish and fried garlic in the morning. Okay, if I'm being honest, maybe I did have some theories as to why I thought this way. Maybe it's because at the time I wanted white boys to like me. Everyone in my town was brown, and I couldn't help but feel that being white made you extra special. People said I liked white people stuff. Weezer, Kurt Vonnegut, Daria, Jonathan Franzen, Donnie Darko. The media? Maybe it was because I was taught from an early age that everything white people did was better. I saw a white woman wear this at the airport, so I bought one. Such fine taste. How do I look? Ma, you look like $1,000,000. Dang, it was probably a combo of all those things. By the end of sophomore year, I'd heard it enough to know it about myself. What is it? You got something to say? You're whitewashed. At our school, the term whitewashed had a very specific meaning. It meant you were trying to act white as a way to be cool. So I like white stuff. So what? It means you're a big fat poser. In 2002, being called a poser was even worse than being called whitewashed. It meant you were a fake, a phony. Ugh, if I didn't have that trig quiz, then I would totally skip school tomorrow. I would have never skipped school. Just FYI. I don't know why I said that. I wasn't trying to be white. I mean, just look at me. Okay. That's it. Thank you.
José Araguz has published 7 chapbooks and 5 books of poetry, including the 2022 Rotura. He is a Canto Mundo Fellow who won the 2016 Academy of American Poetry Prize. He teaches at Suffolk University, where he is editor of Salamander. José was my mentor last semester at Solstice, and in the extensive, encouraging responses he wrote to my work, his mind ranged widely over the field of poetry. He introduced me to new poets and new ideas about poetry. He emphasized that good poems grow out of the poet's ability to be playful, to experiment, to take risks, and to be open to the mind of the poem. He said that when all else fails, try a triptych. And he always left me with more to think about, often in phrases that themselves had the sound of poetry. The challenge of writing persona poems, José wrote, is, quote, getting the voices down of people who don't speak in poetry, but in voices where poetry can be found. It is one of José's many gifts as a teacher and a poet, the ability to give voice and help give voice to poetry wherever it can be found. Please join me in welcoming José Araguz.
Wow, thank you so much, Peter. That was a very lovely introduction. I getting yourself quoted back, I'm like, wait, I said that? Oh, so thank you for keeping track. I appreciate it and loved our work together. Tonight I'll be reading 2 poems from my 5th book, Rotura, which was mentioned in the bio. And specifically, I'm reading 2 poems which I wrote in light of the first time Trump got elected. So I didn't think I'd have to revisit these poems or this material, but um, here we are, and we move onward. Um, okay. Speaking of this first poem is a triptych. We did not plan that. All right. This is American Studies. My wife tells me of reading the Dear America books as a child, those stories told via the diaries of young women who lived during difficult times in American history. And these stories filled with suffering were the facts behind the suffering. Her favorite involved the RMS Titanic, the unsinkable ship that sank. I asked if trying to imagine what it looked like was what captivated, and she says no, says only one book led to another until she realized she could never see it nor accept it. After the election, my friend explains he feels he could manage here, but not his children. He explains he spoke to their school director, who comforted by talking about police presence. But if there's police, he asks, before anything happens, what will happen when something does? American algebra. Everything is X until proven Y. Dear America, if X represents what my friend feels thinking about the police, what language do you imagine he worries his children speaking publicly? And what language are we speaking now? Show your work. Another friend writes, here is a verse I think about a lot, and maybe the mirror of the world will clear once again. She shares she's been sick since the election, as I've been. I imagine our voices trying to commiserate between coughs. In physics, energy can neither be created nor destroyed. What American physics happens here as I read and hear her voice behind the verse she sent? Are you, dear America, afraid as I am that our faces will no longer be there when the mirror clears? And this book opens and closes with two poems about questions and conversations between my mother and I. And the first one is really long, so I'm going to read you the closing one. This one is called Questions After the Election. In her story about being told by her white bosses, white secretaries, vote Trump, you better vote Trump, as she punched out from work as usual, tired and body sore, does my mother know she gathered the darkness of each corner of the factory and the darkness of the drive home, switching between stations, nothing sounding right, and the darkness in her mind, listing all the work waiting for her at home, and the darkness of the night over Corpus Christi, and how these darknesses spill over now into every word I'm urged to write. Because nights like these are ink, and her story of pretending not to hear, but telling me what she heard, what was said, is a story of darknesses being separated, made distinct as words on a page, which hold darkness in one form until we close our eyes and darkness shifts to darkness shifted. At the end of her shift, does she know about the darkness I will hold for her? Thank you.
Good evening. This is Maria Luisa Arroyo Cruzado, Solstice graduate of summer 2015. This evening, I have the joy of introducing Nicole Terez Dutton. Her work has appeared in Plowshares, 32 Poems, Indiana Review, and Salt Hill Journal. Nicole earned an MFA from Brown University and has received fellowships from the Frost Place, the Fine Arts Work Center, Bread Loaf Writers Conference, and the Virginia Center for the Creative Arts. Her collection of poems, If One of Us Should Fall, was selected as the winner of the 2011 Cave Canem Poetry Prize. She teaches, as we all know, in the Solstice Low Residency MFA program, and she is the editor of the Kenyon Review. Please welcome Nicole Terez Dutton.
There. Thank you for that introduction. So that was wonderful. I really appreciate it. I'm going to read 4 little fragments. I've been thinking a lot about longing and as chemical state, as something that's like inhabiting your body. And a lot of emotions are like that. But I've been thinking about just the chemistry of these feelings. And I've also been thinking about the chemistry of memory itself. And also just kind of the mutability of that and how memories often just get overwritten. So these are just four little, very new, raw fragments. Oh, also with the chemical, I've been thinking about jonesing. So you'll see that these are all Jones inspired. Spool of days, Jones. Long and no sense of time. We walking slow across the parking lot, slow enough for more than one plane to scar the sky, for it to get visibly darker. The paperback in your hand to dim. We squint, Jones. The heat of your heat, so close to my heat, Jones. Read it to me. Read it again. 2. Window down, speed through ochre stalks, Jones. For miles, Jones. Space and time continue in disruption, Jones. I want it all and I want it right now, Jones. Finish the sentence already. Pull the meat to the side. Keep yourself compartmentalized, Jones. A prime number, a solid uninterrupted, Jones. Beyond the endless military thrash with the Pine Barren, Jones, the radio tower don't ping. And so I lose you. I lose you in the corn, in the deep, in the wind. 3. Sturdy tether, and please just let me know the end of the sentence, Jones. Prayer for elastic everything, Jones. No deadline, no dead zone. Stop time, Jones. Go back, Jones. Do over, Jones. Overdue, Jones. Slap the shit out of his stupid mouth, Jones. Save your breath, Jones. Quietly sitting quietly, Jones. Slam the door and keep the wind at your back, Jones. Sturdiest spine ever, Jones. Nothing left to your imaginary, your better angels. I told you already, Jones. I told you already. I don't even have to say it again. 4. Big, squat craftsman with summer-ready porch and gladiola and poppies and edible garden and cat's claw and hyacinth and azalea and ruby-throated hummingbirds and long arcs and dusty milliners, soft as donkey ears and with velvet lawn and a sprinkler to run through, barefoot, Jones, that Jones, the lightning bugs and gardener snakes in the moss, the cool, the night coming on, slow, nowhere to go, nowhere to go, nowhere to go right now. That Jones. Thank you.
Hello, my name is Sister Allison Regina Goliath, and I am a third semester writing for young people student here at Solstice. It is my pleasure to introduce tonight Saadia Faruqi. Saadia is a Pakistani-American author and interfaith activist. She writes the popular children's early reader series Yasmin and many other books for children, including chapter books, graphic novels, and picture books. Her award-winning middle grade novels include A Place at the Table, 1,000 Questions, Yosef Azim is Not a Hero, and, most recently, The Partition Project. Her first graphic novel, Saving Sunshine, was nominated for the Eisner and Harvey Awards in 2024 and was a Kirkus Best Book in 2023. Saadia is editor-in-chief of Blue Minaret, a magazine for Muslim art, poetry, and prose, and was featured in Oprah magazine in 2017 as a woman making a difference in her community. She lives in Houston, Texas, with her husband and children. Please join me in giving a very warm welcome to Saadia.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here, and I'm very honored. I'm going to read from The Partition Project, which is my newest middle grade novel that came out last year, and it is about the partition, which many Americans don't know about, which is the problem that the main character grapples with. It was an event that happened in 1947 in India when the British that were colonizing the subcontinent for several hundred years left, and they partitioned India into 2 countries and created the country of Pakistan, where I was born and grew up until the age of 22 when I immigrated to the US. And the story is about a Pakistani American first generation girl, just like my kids, who is making a documentary about the partition for her school. She's in 7th grade. and she has the difficult task of convincing her classmates and her teachers while learning history of other countries and the world is important in any time, but especially today. So this is quite a bit, this is in the middle. I'm just reading a couple of pages. And she is in 7th grade, where if you don't know Texas, all of history is Texas history in 7th grade, which is very interesting. In the scene, her teacher is playing a game where she puts statements on the whiteboard, and the kids raise their hands or stand up if they agree with the statement, or don't if they don't agree. And before I read from this place, the teacher has just put up a statement saying it's important to learn your family's history. And then I'll read from there. I wave my arm and say, I want to say something too. Mrs. Escobar signals to Tiffany, and she passes me the Sharpie with a jingle of her charm bracelets. I agree with what Tiffany is saying. I begin, ignoring Tiffany's eye rolls. But when I read that statement, I don't think of my dad's achievements as one of the top doctors of Fort Bend County 5 years in a row, or my mom's Dietitian of the Year award. I was actually thinking of my family's history, how my parents came to this country as students and struggled to start their careers, or how my grandmother suffered through so much trauma to make her home in a new place so many decades ago. Those are the things that make me who I am, even if I didn't really know it until now. Like, it affects me without even realizing. It gives me a sense of, I don't know, pride or happiness, like they made those sacrifices for our family. I take a deep breath and look around me, wondering if I was making any sense. Surprisingly, lots of kids are nodding like they agree. It takes me all of 5 seconds to notice that they're the kids who look like they're from somewhere else. Mrs. Escobar smiles. That was very well put, Maha. Thank you. She clicks to a few more statements, such as, history makes us more informed, and learning history helps us do better in the present. Although I stand up for all of those, I don't raise my hand for the Sharpie. Saying what I did about my family's history took a lot out of me. There are also statements like, the social studies curriculum is boring, which everyone stands up for. No surprise there. Mrs. Escobar laughs. She says there's no need for debating that one. I'll spend the rest of the year trying to change your minds. Needless to say, nobody believes her. But she's a cool teacher, so we mostly nod or just stay silent. Then she puts up the final statement. Our social studies curriculum should include the history of other countries. I stand up. Then I look around. Almost everyone else is sitting down. What's wrong with all these people? Maybe it's because it's lunchtime, but I feel a little sad and a little lost. You guys have something against world history, I scoff, crossing my arms on my chest. Come on, Maha, we can hardly memorize all the dates and places for our own state, Kim says. Tiffany adds, yeah, I'd fail all my exams if I had to learn about every other country too. That would mess up my GPA big time. I guess I'd have agreed with them just a month ago, but now, after what I've been learning and hearing and feeling, thanks to Dadi, my world is upside down. Maybe Kim is right. I am different. We learn world history in 8th grade, I say weekly, and probably high school too. Mrs. Escobar nods. That's right, but we're only talking about 7th grade right now, Maha. Do you want to say something? Do I? It seems like I'm the only one concerned about history of far-off places like Pakistan. I take the Sharpie slowly, gathering my thoughts. Well, I've been learning about the history of an event called partition, which happened in 1947 in the Indian subcontinent. I'm guessing most of you don't know what that is or where. I'm guessing nobody cares about 1947, which is like another century. But I've been doing a lot of research about it, and it's opened my eyes to a bunch of stuff. What kind of stuff? Tiffany groans. Oh, please, are you going to give us a history lesson about a country nobody cares about? We should call you History Girl or something. The whole class laughs. There is a flash of anger in my gut so severe that I flinch. Or maybe it's just my stomach reminding me it's in danger of collapsing on itself. I care about it, I say through gritted teeth. It's the history of my ancestors. Yeah, but that doesn't mean everyone needs to learn about it, Brandon says. I breathe through my nose. I think it does. Partition was a really significant event. Like more than 1 million people died and millions more were displaced. 2 new countries were created. The balance of power shifted. We should learn about it because it's part of the aftermath of World War II. World War II? That was nowhere near South Asia, Tiffany scoffs. You're delusional, Maha. Okay, I'm about to say something to her. Just then, the bell rings and everyone starts to pack. I sigh and sink down in my chair, feeling drained. Kids file out slowly, giving me weird looks as they pass. Someone says, "Chill out, history girl. Why are you always so serious?" Mrs. Escobar comes to me and takes the Sharpie from my hand. "I'm proud of you for speaking up, Maha." I try to smile. Thanks, I guess. Thank you.
Writer Linda LeGarde Grover is a member of the Minnesota Chippewa tribe, Bois Forte Band of Ojibwa, and Professor Emeritus of American Indian Studies at the University of Minnesota, Duluth. She is author of fiction, poetry, research articles, newspaper columns, and essays. She is author of fiction, poetry, research articles, newspaper columns, and essays. Linda's research on American Indian boarding schools, a contemptible crime imposed by the U.S. government in the late 19th and much of the 20th century, and the effects of those federal policies upon Indian communities, families, and individuals, has inspired her multiple genre work. Linda's publications have received the Electa Kinney Award, the Flannery O'Connor Award, the Janet Heidinger Kafka Prize, the Minnesota Book Award, Northeastern Book Award, Red Mountain Press Editors Award, and the Native Writers Circle of the Americas Book Award. I can't wait to hear what she'll read for us tonight. Please give Linda a warm welcome.
Miigwech, thank you so much for that beautiful introduction. I've been trying to decide what to read, and now I just decided on something else. I'm going to read an excerpt from Gitchigami Hearts, Stories and Histories from Missabi-Kong, which is about the area of northeastern Minnesota. I live in Duluth, which is called in Ojibwe language, Anagamesing, which means the place of the small portage. We're on Lake Superior, and people traveled by portaging and on canoes in the old days. And it's also, Duluth is also called Missabi-Kong, which is the place of the giants. And now that you think of it, yeah, my family was a boarding school family. And so 2 and maybe 3 generations of the family were removed from home when they were children and sent away to school. It was a really difficult, long-lasting experience. So I'm going to read something that I wrote about my Uncle Bob. On the lovely summer afternoon of this conversation with Bob, he paused, thinking, and then started to talk. And then when I got to be 8 years old, it was time for me to go away from home to Indian school. I was the oldest in my family, and I felt that my grandmother needed me, so it was hard to leave. And that last summer seemed to go by really fast. I do particularly remember there at Chippewa City, where they lived, from the last summer before I went away to school. A nice day, sunny out, and the lake was sparkling. You know how it is a pretty dark blue on days like this, with sun sparkles on the water? He looked past me, past the houseplants that sat on the table in front of the door at the deck to my dad's house, looking for Lake Superior 2 miles down the hill, but obscured by trees in Duluth. And for the Lake Superior at the edge of Chippewa City, obscured and real as it had been in 1920. 8-year-old Bob was by himself on the shore, walking around and skipping rocks. The waves were small, lapping in one after the other against the large black rocks at the shore. Pebbles clicked and rattled as they were pushed against the rocks, and then away back into the water as the waves receded. Next to the largest rock, sheltered from the wind and high enough to keep it from washing away in the tide, was a rowboat turned on its side. Bob walked around the boat. People kept it in nice condition for ricing and fishing and going places in those days, and then sat on one of the large black rocks, listening to the waves and rattling pebbles as he watched the lake, the sun sparkling on the rippling, lapping water. The music of the lake and feel of sun-warmed stone against his body was soothing, like being rocked and sung to, and Bob almost fell asleep. Then all of a sudden, he said, there was a crashing sound from the woods. I looked up, and out from the woods ran a deer, straight past the rock where I was sitting and right into the water, its legs thrashing and churning the water as it began to swim. From the woods there was still the sound of crashing through brush, and I wondered if there were more deer. And then two men ran out. I knew both, my uncle and our neighbor Anton, and they were both chasing the deer. They yelled to me, "Into the boat!" Anton shot him and he's hit. Well, I run and pull the boat to push off to the water, and all three of us get in. Antoine rowing like crazy, and my uncle unwinding a rope from the bottom of the boat. We're getting closer to the buck, and he is tiring, he is hurt, and the men had to make it quick. My uncle swung the rope around his neck, and Antoine shot him again. We towed him back to the shore, and they butchered him right there, me making myself useful where I could. I was only 8, pretty small yet. As they divided the meat, people from the 14 families came to the shore, and everybody took some home. That was the custom in those days. When someone got a deer, then the 14 families shared. The custom was that the old people or people who were sick got the best parts, and we were proud to be able to give the best of the deer to them. I felt like a man, like my uncle and Antoine. It was a day that I've never forgotten, bringing deer meat to the families, and that memory has stayed with me for 80 years. Not long after that, it was time to go. I had to go away from home, from my grandma, and from Chippewa City to Indian school. At boarding school, I was a boy. I sure hoped that I could go home to Chippewa City sometime, where I could be with the men and do the things that men did. That was a long time ago, Indians living like that. Those days were good ones, and I sure have good memories of living at Chippewa City, right there on the lake. Uncle Bob lifted his cup of tea from the table next to the couch, but instead of sipping, looked over the cup and through the dining room windows. To his back was the kitchen. Outside the kitchen window, the hill that sloped down to the point of rocks, Goat Hill, and the west end of Duluth, where he'd lived as a young man in a family of many branches, twigs, and tendrils that grew and spread across the country, but always cared for and nourished its roots. He was looking at all that, I think. Outside, the overgrown lilac bushes had bloomed weeks before. The leaves, dense in the late summer dampness of the front yard and taller than the window, were a wall of deep green, as lush, I thought, as the woods back of Chippewa City when Uncle Bob was 8 years old. So, miigwech, thank you everybody for listening to me. It's an honor to be here.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Colleen Egan, and I'm an alum of the Solstice MFA and Creative Writing program. I have the honor of introducing Tonya C. Hegamin for tonight's reading. Tonya has written short stories and novels, including Pemba Song, Most Loved in All the World, Willow, and M+O, as well as poetry, including Dear Insulin, Edge, and Resilience is a Beautiful Thing. These stories are focused on cultural history, inclusion, disability, and ability, LGBTQIA+, body positivity, and womanist points of view. All themes and ideas she heavily identifies with and advocates for. She's had her essays published in numerous academic publications, including the Journal for Creative Writing Innovations, Can Creative Writing Really Be Taught?, and the Journal of Creative Writing Studies. Her work has won numerous awards and received well-deserved recognition from the New York Public Library, the Christopher Award Foundation, Fortune Magazine, the Washington Post, and Essence Magazine. Hegamin attended the New School University's Creative Writing MFA program and holds a certificate in Diversity and Inclusion Education and Training from Cornell University's Institute of Labor Relations. Currently, Tonya is a tenured associate professor at SUNY's Medgar Evers College in Brooklyn, New York. However, I believe it is just as important to note that Tonya is so much more than a writer and an artist. She's also an advocate. As a type 1 diabetic, Tonya uses her life experiences as a queer and chronically ill woman of color to educate others. Her advocacy focuses on medical bias and seeking legal accommodations. She also supports patients and medical professionals suffering from social stigmas of health through the lens of narrative medicine. She's worked with organizations such as Women Against Rape, Police Athletic League, and Planned Parenthood since 1998. Tonya is an empowering, empathetic, and truly passionate human being. Please join me in welcoming Tonya C. Hegamin.
Thank you so much, Colleen. That was such a beautiful introduction, and what an honor to be in such a wonderful lineup. So I'll begin with a poem that was just mentioned and that we talked about in our session today. And it's called Resilience is a Beautiful Thing, or The Doctor Asked Me to Consider Weight Loss Surgery. And it has a quote from Jay-Z that says, "What you eat don't make me shit." My beauty has layers you will never comprehend. My layers have layers more complicated than cake. Haven't I been cut down enough? My body is not yours. My health is my own. My layers have beauty you cannot behold. My curves and ripples smash your square pegs. You see me a tin of minced meat, yet I have already severed myself and sewn in all the candy hearts with more precision than any surgeon. My fat has protected and comforted me through cultural abuse. It has wrangled me from suicide, branded me with its sigil for my future powers. I embody the bounty of creation. Foundation from my ancestors, the ones that transformed your bland colonial diet, the ones who knew their beauty could never be owned. Their ghosts are as essential as the soil, as elemental as the sea, and you cannot cut them from me. Flesh is the flimsiest layer, manipulated and undulating sister to fantasy, of me, but not me. I used to dream of slicing myself open to chuck the fluff and texture, then sew it all back together the right way with flimsy plastic and sharp edges. My layers have layers you will never comprehend. In between all the nuanced strata of resent for the wretched systems you build to conform me, convert me, contain me, all the locks I have picked and the puzzles unfurled, and now you will tell me to hack apart my prize. The frosting of my survival has nothing to do with the flowers that made me. I learned to jiggle and juggle the present and future while standing tiptoe on a burning shitbox of the past. My body is my own. I am the only architect of my triumph. I hold the sledgehammer of happiness. I only use the scaffolding and tools given me by the universe. I do not own the plans. I do not expect the fruits. I focus on the labor. Every step forward is an application for self-employment. My health is not yours. I exist on my own terms. I gave my hair to the river. I wept for the fallen deer. My organs may fail, my mind might fall to disarray, but I have lived 1,000 lies your science cannot detect. I have read all of your books, studied your ways, conformed for your comedy. What have you sacrificed for me? There is no compensation for these tribulations, no quick fix or suppressant. My twinkle would explode the vaults where you hide your preciousness. You fear I will supernova your ass. For every shimmering stretch mark, each curiously healed scar, Even the cookies and the kale are all a testament, an experiment that led to this inevitable, unfathomable conclusion. My body is not yours. My health is my own. Thank you. I think that's about 3 minutes. Thanks, everybody.
Hello, I'm Quentin Collins, Solstice MFA Assistant Director and Program Alum. When stepping into this Assistant Director role, I followed the example of two women who served as pillars of organizational structure and hospitality at Solstice, the most recent being Beth Little. Indeed, Beth's examples gave me much to strive toward, particularly her active listening skills. Beth always invests sincere interest in others, and this quality not only supported her excellence as Solstice Assistant Director, but also her writing. As shown in her fiction and creative nonfiction, Beth remains attentive to the details of everything around her, mining for meaning, analyzing, and repeating everything back with a clear sense of care. Beth has 2 degrees in writing, an M.Lit with distinction in fiction from the University of St. Andrews in Scotland, and an MFA in writing for young people from Solstice. Her writing has appeared in the anthology Somebody's Child, Stories of Adoption, Easttown Fiction, and the YA Review Network, as well as Hunger Mountain. Additionally, Beth received an SCBWI Magazine honor in 2016, and her recent piece of short fiction titled On Falling in Love in Boarding School won the 2023 Flash Fiction Contest for Pigeon Pages. This past year, Beth attended the Tin House Summer Workshop, and she also attended the Kenyon Review Writers Workshop in 2023. Please join me in welcoming Beth Little.
Hi, everyone. Thank you. Thank you, Q. That was so nice. I love Solstice. It's my most favorite place ever. So I'm very happy to read. A shout out to Nicole, actually, because this piece that I'm reading from started at Kenyon, actually in a workshop also that I was in with fiction faculty member Gina Chung. So it's called Weed. Let me just actually make sure that I'm not going too far over. Weed. The sky went dark on a Monday, pushing the straining sun behind a curtain of smoke, creating an opaque swath of grayness where light would catch, lost, never making it to the retina, never lighting up the things we had been used to seeing. Tree leaves in the sunlight, a glint off the lake, a squinty view of a deer through the trees, or the forest floor spotted and daring looking. And so, in this relative darkness, thick and vast, we see with our hands out in front of us, using them as a guide, a buffer, a shield against a stumble over the rake in the yard, the log in the road, the slick of wet leaves on the front path, our own feet, ourselves, clumsy and fumbling as ever. It's only been a week since the smoke and its particles put up a blanket across the sky. It's only been a week, and already I struggle to recall the exact way the sun glowed through the cluster of birches off the backside of the house. The dark woods backlit behind them. The first day we woke up to a sky unchanged, no morning light, and we wondered but didn't speak our questions aloud. The next night we stayed up to watch the sky, absent of stars, never turn into morning. Then the following night we stood on the back stoop waiting to see one single star. Then something caught Hank's eye and he grabbed his headlamp and he said, "Go to bed, I'll be up in a bit." I watched Hank from the bedroom window, headlamp shining on all fours, his face close to the ground, studying something. I thought I heard a yell in the dark, but I went to sleep anyway. The next day I woke up to his side of the bed undisturbed and the truck gone from the garage. Now the sky is dark and the house is empty except for me and the dog, and I work at remembering the way the street looked with the light of an unshadowed sun shining through the branches onto the dirt, brightening the way ahead. The week before the sky went gray, Hank had raised a long section of ground in the yard. He had wielded the machete he bought at the flea market in Brownfield, hacking at a particular green stalk that sprouted in the soil. With every swing of the metal, rocks and pebbles disturbed the earth, flew all around him with vengeance. The little bits of green, the offenses, threatened the well-being of Hank's beloved roses, his blueberry bushes, the tulips and herbs. I could hear him ranting about the roots and sprouts and green bits, and how he knew they would choke the plants he'd chosen, the one that belonged there. And so it was as if Hank knew the world was about to change, and he wasn't going to stay here to live in it with his plants that could never survive the invasion or in this house with me and the dog, so he took the truck and hit the road. Now I stand at the edge of the property and turn my light to the brightest setting, checking again to see if what I think I see is true. If growing out of the dirt where, lit by my light, are 30 or 40 little green shoots a couple centimeters high. The weed is in fact not obliterated. Even in the grayness, it is very much alive, and without a doubt, considering the massacre of leaves and stems, branches and soil that took place here only a few days ago, a wickedly resilient little thing. My arms folded against the morning chill, I hear Hank and his friend, Vesta, the garden guru, talking about the plant a month or so ago. Their words echo in the emptiness of the dark yard. Invasive, not from here, alien. And the way their eyes avoided my black hair, my eyes narrow and dark, my skin olive in the sun, contrasting me with all the whiteness, her, Hank, every neighbor for miles, the shutters on the house, and she had spit the words. That weed is downright stealing the space of what's ours. You know what I mean. And I did, and she knew it. And now, watching the little plant push through the soil, I can't help but smile. Thank you.
Hey everyone, thank you Quentin for letting me introduce Josh Neufeld tonight. Josh has been at this for a long time now. You probably know him best for his best-selling graphic nonfiction book, AD New Orleans After the Deluge. But he's created tons of comics you can find online that dive into all sorts of topics you would never expect. And you can learn from them things like how the US Census works or why we're always so careless with our cell phones, the psychology behind that. He's even got this series of pareidolia art on Instagram where he takes photos of inanimate objects, sketches them, and then, finds the things in them that most people might not see or anyone with a great imagination would see. I was asked to introduce Josh because he was my mentor during my fourth semester. My concentration wasn't in comics and graphic narratives, it was actually in fiction. But I reached out to him hoping that his visual storytelling skills would help me think a little bit differently about how I approach my own writing. And I'm so glad I did this because even now I'm constantly tapping into things that I learned from Josh during that time. And great comics aren't just entertaining, they can illuminate too. And Josh does this so well. He brings clarity and emotion to everything he tackles, whether it's social issues or personal stories, global events. But he's proven time and again that comics aren't simply entertainment. They can reach an audience and help them understand the world and each other. So without further ado, Josh Neufeld, everyone.
Wow, Mark, that was awesome. I'm humbled, so happy to see your face and to hear those amazing, kind words. And I'm so thrilled to be part of this distinguished group of readers. Thanks to Meg and Quentin, of course. Wow, I'm still thinking about what you said. I understand my own work a little better now. Thank you, Mark. All right, I'm going to just jump right into this piece. It's a work of comics journalism. It's called Clean Slate, a student debt forgiveness story, and it was originally published by The Emancipator, which is an homage website to the abolitionist newspapers of the 19th century, published by the Boston Globe. The piece was originally done to be read on your phone, so every panel was square. So it's a little bit of crimps my style of my normal layout, but it was kind of fun to have that constraint. And the thing to make sure that people understand is it's about the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, which forgives the remaining balance on federal direct loans for public service employees. And it's a story of student debt and a president that we used to have named Joe Biden, who helped out a lot of those folks. And the other important thing to remember is it's about a real person. It's journalism, just in comics form. Here we go. I was afraid I might die with those bets. How Samuel Altman fought the system and won. When DePaul University professor Samuel Altman signed on to the Public Service Loan Forgiveness Program, it came with some sacrifices. I would have preferred to live in Indianapolis, but I decided to stay in Greencastle, an hour away from the big city. So in case my car died, I could get a ride or walk to campus. Plus, even though he had played by the rules and had never missed a scheduled payment, my lender, FedLoan, always treated me as though I were a felon on the run. Then, 6 years into his PSLF loan, Altman was informed that none of his 72 previous payments had been counted towards the principal of the $126,000 he had borrowed. What? Like so many others, because Altman hadn't specifically opted into the PSLF program, he didn't qualify. According to them, I was just getting started. I was now looking at 10 more years of payments. Altman appealed the decision. I bombarded the Department of Education and FedLoan with documentation like records of all my previous payments, and was initially denied. But then, in late 2021, after the Biden administration announced it was going to make the program live up to its promise, poof! Altman's balance due was reduced to zero. In fact, Altman has recently been receiving refund checks for overpayments. It feels like winning the lottery. I'm one of the lucky ones. Because I was diligent, I stayed on top of it. If it happened to me, it can happen to someone else. And he has some ideas about how the system should be overhauled. Namely, all student loans should only be 2% interest maximum. I don't think you need 6% for student loans. Thank you. Bye, guys.
At this point, can we maybe unmute ourselves and give these fabulous readers a last round of applause?
Yay!
Feel free to yell and scream and hoot.